Hey, I'm Joe Connolly. Today, you'll hear about ways to run your business better from a startup coach who has been quoted in the New York Times, who has worked for a startup, who invests now in startups, Alisa Cohn, who's also lectured at Harvard and Cornell, too. Alisa, how do you know if you should have a business coach?
First of all, hi, Joe. Thanks for having me. The answer is maybe two things. One is that you recognize that you're not getting the results that you're looking for from your small business, from your startup, whatever it is. So you're hoping to get a certain amount of sales, you're hoping to attract certain kind of customers or reach certain market segments, and it's not working. And even though you have a good team and you're doing goal setting, you can't figure out what's not working. That's a great time to bring in a business coach to help you identify and diagnose what's missing and help you build your skills to do it. The second thing I would say is that anybody doing something for the first time, they don't know what they don't know. And it's very helpful to find a coach who can help you navigate the areas that you don't know.
Interesting. Is there a difference, Alisa, between not working and not working easily for you?
Well, I mean, first of all, if something's not working, you've got to solve it and you've got to get it working. If it's not working easily, on the one hand, business is tough and just, reaching high goals and aspirational goals is hard. But if it seems like it's harder than it has to be because somehow your team is not really rowing in the same direction, because people aren't doing their jobs, because people aren't meeting expectations, those kinds of things, you can still reach your goals, but gosh, it's so hard. It should be easier than that. And you should be thinking about how you're leading your team to make it easy so you're not going across those headwinds.
That's an interesting differentiation. The founder of a business with a couple of hundred employees in manufacturing, I'll never forget it. He told me once, it should not take a Herculean effort to get every day's work out. And it sounds like if you're just pushing a boulder uphill every day, you need some help. I want to mention before we get to producer Neil A. Carousso with his questions, I really like something that you do on your website. And I think it's under About Us.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than saying, we'll do this, that, and everything else for you, you describe the person, the client, who would need your customer. And I found it so effective. For instance, you don't say, we can help you or call us if, but you say, you started out with a dream to build a company, to create something significant, but now you don't have the time for the things that you know are most important, and you never feel ahead of your to-do list. That must generate a lot of calls for you, Alisa.
Well, thank you for those nice words. I try to practice what I preach, and I personally try to be very client oriented, because my job is to help my clients understand and then ultimately solve their problems, and also help them assess where are they going, and how to get there. And the answer is, for that particular one, a founder is a certain breed, and I love founders, and I think founders do recognize themselves in the work that I do.
Neil.
So, Joe, you and I both looked at the website, and what stood out to me was, Alisa, you wrote about influence, and I'm going to read what you wrote there. Influence is the way you get others on board and sell your ideas. How do the most successful business owners reach that holy grail?
Oh, well, we're influencing all the time. So people think that influencing is about talking. It's not. It's about listening. It's about understanding the point of view of the other people around you, so who you're trying to influence. So rather than the brilliance of your idea, you understand the agenda, the aspirations, the motivations of the people around you, and you speak your idea, your need, whatever it is, into that space, into their listening. That's like the number one thing about influence. The second thing I would say is that people think of influence as an event. Like, I'm going to try to talk you into this right now. Influence is a process of getting to know people, understanding the landscape, understanding the dynamics, and then positioning what you're trying to get done, the ideas you're trying to sell, into that context.
So, Alisa, obviously we're in a very precarious time in business. startups often rise out of recessions. But how do you make your business sustainable? If you see a new opportunity right now, how do you make sure that it's sustainable for future market needs?
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, we're living in this, as you said, unprecedented time. And just to say, we can't really predict the future. So all we can do is really think about, do the best thing we can to hypothesize and research what the future is going to look like. And the thing that we're building can't just be okay for today and for this year. It's got to be able to evolve over the long term. One example I'll give you is that, if you're doing if you invented and are now building a startup around a new way of doing COVID testing that's quick and easy, that's fantastic, but that may not be the market need over time. You've got to expand that to think overall about doing testing of other kinds of things so that people can get the information they need, because they don't necessarily need to know forever if they have COVID, but they do need to understand important health information about themselves over time. So that's one example for you.
That's a great example of looking downstream, as they say. Go back and just say a little bit more about influencing starts with listening.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, people are not persuaded by the brilliance of your ideas, even though we wish that they were. People are persuaded because they feel met and understood, because they feel that their agenda and motivations and aspirations are in some way captured by the thing that you want to do. So when people tell you this, you have to listen. People also will do things for you. The number one reason people will do things for you is because they like you. That's the truth. We don't like to hear that, but that's the truth. So when you listen to people and mirror back what they say, that is the way people begin to start liking you, appreciating you. And that relatedness is going to help you sell ideas, even if they're a little bit controversial to the person that you're talking to.
So that means that you can't, and this is an exaggeration, just go around issuing instructions, even if people like you generally. You have to wait. You can't just tell people what to do.
You can't just tell people what to do, even if you're the boss. And that's a big wake-up call for people. They think, oh, I'm the boss, I'm the founder, and I should be able to tell people what to do, and they should listen to me. Well, guess what? They don't do what you want them to do just because you want them to do it. And if they did, they're not really the best workers, because you want people who are innovative and creative and resourceful. You don't want just like compliant order takers. So the problem is that as the CEO, as the founder of any kind of company, your job is actually to be the chief listening officer and the chief influence officer, because you've got to get people all around you all the time working together with people they may not like, or they have sort of political agendas with. You've got to manage the stakeholders, you get customers involved. It's amazing all the influence challenges you have when you thought you were the boss and could just tell people what to do.
I'm actually reading a book written by Dave Ramsey about leadership within a company and developing leaders within your firm so that they think like entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
How do you train business owners, coach them on making sure that their employees think of your business as their own?
Well, first of all, it's helpful to hire people who have that mindset as a starting point, right? That you want to hire people with an owner's mindset. The second thing is give them ownership. And the third thing is applaud their creative ideas, encourage them to do appropriate risk taking, applaud the risks and what they've learned, because ownership is also about the idea of learning and creating a better organization. So when you actually reward those practices, that helps people do them over and over again. If people are afraid and they're going to get punished, and also they're constantly being like micromanaged, and they have no freedom to maneuver, they're not going to feel like owners.
Alisa, from a business point of view, how have you done something that a lot of business owners dream of, and that is getting big companies as clients?
Well, let me think about that. The answer is that you have to, first of all, decide in your mind's eye that I'm going to do this. So when I started as a coach 20 years ago, and my first client was an individual who hired me for, I want to say, $250 a month, right? So like, that's not sustainable.
A month.
I knew that what I wanted to do was to start working in companies, and you do a lot of things. You let people know that you want to work inside, you want to have corporate clients. You network with people who can bring you into corporations. You might do a workshop or two for free. In my case, I got originally asked to do a training, a facilitated training inside of my first corporate client, EMC, because I was a CPA. I still am a CPA, a recovering CPA, and they wanted me to teach business acumen. And I thought, well, if I teach that, that's a foot in the door. And I know that I'll be able to work my way into the leadership curriculum, which I did 6 months later. And then
some things never change, right?
Yeah.
Some things never change. You get your foot in the door and you go, boy.
Yeah, and you take that social proof and then you keep building upon it, right? So one thing leads to another, but you have to decide that you're going to make that happen, because, what I have found is that nothing just happens. You got to make things happen.
So, Alisa, for those who see new opportunities in this economy right now, what would you caution against?
First of all, I would caution everybody all the time about not taking on more risk than you can afford, right? So you have to have a backup plan so that, if things go south, you can always support your family. That's very important for people. The second thing I would say is that if you think this is what I think entrepreneurs get into all the time. They think they have this brilliant idea and no one's doing it. Do enough research to recognize that if it was a brilliant idea, someone else would be doing it. And if no one else is doing it, it may not be a brilliant idea. So maybe test yourself 2, 3, 4 times to make sure you really have the idea that's going to take off. And then I would caution you against trying to, in the startup world, people kind of raise too much money too quickly. And there's a fast rise and a fast fall. So I would caution you against that as well.
Boy, that's some good advice right there. Finally, there are so many stories, videos about brand building.
Yeah.
And I look at them and there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me as though build your brand simply means that brand means your reputation, right? Mm-hmm. Build your reputation. So I'll ask you to close by giving us a good example, a useful example of how to build your brand.
Okay, let me ask you a question. As a solo entrepreneur like me, or like a company like the folks who are listening?
Let's help the solos and startups.
Okay. Well, I understand what you mean when you say brand can just be fluff, but I would say this. You've got to start by having some substance. So as a solo entrepreneur, it's very helpful to share your ideas on a blog, get published, and over time, get published on more and more prestigious and high-end publications so that your ideas have merit. Share your ideas with the people around you so that they can benefit from your ideas, and then also pass opportunities to you and build your social proof so that what that means is the people who have already hired you are kind of endorsing you. That's what I would say to solo entrepreneurs, to build your brand over time so it's based on a solid foundation, not just a whole bunch of fluffy talk.
That's a great example. You're known by the company you keep.
Yes.
And build on that. Say, I was on WCBS. I lectured at Harvard.
Right.
People say, oh, wow. And there it is in one sentence. It has been so enjoyable to talk to you, Alisa Cohn. Hope to meet you in person someday.
Likewise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for having me. It was great to be with you guys.